How's everyone doing? I'm ready for lunch too. Great to see all these faces. Oh boy, how do I work this? Okay, so I'm Brian Reyes. I work with the City Department of Environment, and to my left is Melanie Lucas-Conwell of Google. So to get right to it, we had a challenge. Department of Environment, we are the stewards of climate action and strategy in the city of San Francisco. We also handle the data management. And therein lies the challenge because we're government and we're handling large amounts of data. Whoa, it really skipped. Okay, that wasn't supposed to be there. But in any case, so the challenges are real. And we see this right in Embarcadero with sea level rise. So we set out to answer a question with the help of the Mayor's Office of Civic Innovation. Two of them are here, and I highly encourage you to talk to them. And so we set out the question and answer, how might we optimize our greenhouse gas emissions inventory? That's how we calculate and estimate our climate impact. And how we can accelerate that data to be meaningful so we can accelerate our action on climate. In a nutshell, it's optimize our data pipeline. I'm sure many of you know that. I didn't know that until I started talking to Google. The other part was optimizing myself, so it was internal change as well.
Thank you, Brian. So when the three Googlers and I came into SF Environment, we started by just observing Brian's time, how he managed the data, collected it, transformed, analyzed, and then sent it out to different departments. We also interviewed 4 departments to understand how the data that Brian was sending them was being used. And what we found was that municipal data, so emissions from the different city departments, only represented 4% of greenhouse gas emissions for the city of San Francisco. However, that's where Brian was spending most of his time, was on that 4%. Probably sound familiar to a few other government folks here. So our first recommendation was, how do we streamline the analysis and data processing? And we actually ended up finding a few different recommendations through Excel Power Query that would simplify Brian's time spent on data analysis, deduplicate work, and speed up his time. And that ended up saving 50% of his time that was spent on data analysis alone. A great shout out to the Microsoft folks, unintentionally. From there, we also, through our conversations with different departments, found that a lot of different departments were redoing some of the calculations that Brian was already doing. So what we suggested for the city at large was that they build one database with all greenhouse gas emissions that any department could access whenever they wanted to. And this was a big recommendation and still in the process. The next recommendation was that data is great, but for the policymakers and citizens that actually are looking to make a change on climate change, they need an easy way to understand what has an impact. So we recommended a set of dashboards with different granularities that could be used by different folks in different ways so that they could understand where the emissions were coming from. And lastly, our last recommendation was around how to engage with the different city departments. So it started off as every department could command Brian's time as they wish and as they came through, but that was focused on the 4% of greenhouse gas emissions for the city of San Francisco. What we recommended is changing to a model of focusing on the departments that have the biggest impact on climate change in the city of San Francisco. And with Brian's newfound time away from data analysis, this was made possible.
All right, so the actions we took, don't pay attention to that silly system diagram. That was basically us in attempting to map out our entire bloated files from my predecessors, and I'm sure everyone here in government knows this, and there's a bunch of files all over the place, living everywhere, so we decided to map that out, put it all in one file as a master data workbook, and then we essentially used Power Query in order to automate and link all our tasks. So anything I changed downstream or upstream changes downstream, et cetera, and then it loads into a visualization tool. So that's one of the actions that we took. And that is a short-term to mid-term solution. We know that the ultimate solution would be centralizing all of the city's energy and activity data in one place so that we can report out these emissions. Second action was the dashboard. So we use anything we can get our hands on that were free, and that was Tableau, free, public version. And what we worked with internal departments, just internal capacity that we had to build a dashboard that is drilled down. I won't live demo that for you, but you can access it on sfenvironment.org. Our last action that we took was that graduated stakeholder engagement. We've been doing climate action for the last 8 years. And it has been very focused, no matter if you're a small department or a big department that has a high climate impact, we're looking at you evenly. In this case, they are still important players. For example, the MTA, whether you've been in San Francisco, is the Muni. Up in the right-hand corner, we say like MTA, high CO2 potential, impact reduction operations, but the larger community wide emissions, we identify them as a key player because they can influence the rest of the city. And so everyone here talks about scalability. This was sort of a small project to build our own capacity in the government and meaningful, something that we implemented. But we are also part of global networks. One example is C40. It came out of the Paris Accords, or at least it got highlighted. And we've already given presentations to cities like Amman, Jordan, and Sydney, Melbourne, and Jakarta that were in the nascent stages of processing their own data. And we share that knowledge with them already. And so they're using some of our learned lessons and way of thinking to optimize their own process as they accelerate climate change in their own country. I just want to recognize all the people in the Google team that were here, including Melanie, and then again, 2 of our mayor's office of civic innovation people are here that has started the Civic Bridge project. That's Krista and Marielle Reed. So anyone in government or private, if you want to talk to them, they have managed to operationalize a public-private partnership. Thank you.